Let us go to regional Victoria now and catch up with the independent member for Mildura, Ali Cupper. Good to talk to you, Ali.
Hey, Chris.
And look, you sit up there in Sunraysia district in Mildura. I know the area well. You're, 500 kilometres or more from Melbourne, a semi-arid environment. You've got no coronavirus in the region, yet you're all locked down. How unreasonable and how testing is that for your community?
Yeah, it's really testing. It's also sadly familiar to us. One of the things that is so key, I think, to maintaining people's cooperation and people's morale is proportionality. People are willing to cop restrictions. We understand that this is a terrible disease. Few cases can turn into many hundreds or thousands very quickly, but the response needs to be nuanced, and we're not seeing enough of a nuanced response.
Yeah, people don't want to take unnecessary risks either. So if there is a real outbreak, if there's a real risk, they'll cooperate. But there must be no logical reason to have Mildura and those other far-flung regional areas of Victoria under lockdown. What have you done to get some sort of medical advice on this or political reaction from the government, why they aren't having some sort of exemptions for you?
Yeah, look, it's hard, and it's an ongoing process. So all through last year, it was an ongoing battle every step of the way. So whether you were talking about the restrictions that Victoria were imposing, or whether they were the border rules that New South Wales was imposing, or South Australia, because that's been one of the biggest challenges for us. It's not just about the Victorian rules. It's the fact that when we don't have a ring fence between us and the hotspots in Melbourne, it creates more worry and concern for the South Australian and New South Wales premiers, and they're more likely to impose hard lockdowns on us. So it has a ripple effect. And then, despite being 600 kilometres away from the nearest hotspots, despite business being on its knees, we have the most draconian rules of everybody, with that triple whammy of those two border shutdowns and the Victorian rules. So look, we're just lobbying as best we can on one voice in Parliament, but my other regional colleagues are doing the same thing. Just trying to appeal to the government's sense of, responsibility and common sense.
Yeah, it just seems so ridiculous. Of course, you're right on the river there. Across the other side of the river, you've got New South Wales, Baronga, I think you call the township. You're like twin towns, right? So are you allowed to cross the river? There's no border restrictions. You've got to stay 5 kilometres from home or something. But you could easily just skip across the border and have a snitty and a couple of beers, couldn't you?
Look, the Army's not patrolling the bridge this time. So that was kind of a fairly confronting development last time around. It's kind of an honesty system at this point. You have to sign a cross-border declaration, and certainly, they are required to verify that you haven't been to one of the hotspots recently. That's certainly a more workable arrangement than the worst iterations last year, which were, when I was trying to explain to my city colleagues, it's like, drawing a line down the guts of Bourke Street and saying no one's allowed to cross it, make it work. That's what it's like for us when we get these hard borders imposed on us. And it's more likely that those areas will do it if there's no wall or some sort of a ring fence between us and the Melbourne hotspot. So look, meanwhile on the South Australian border, a hard lockdown was imposed last Friday night, and that triggering a whole lot of trauma memories for people, particularly in little towns like Murrayville. At one point, the rules were so brutal last year that they couldn't even access fuel. And this is our worry at this point in time. If this lockdown becomes more protracted, and if those other premiers start to get more skittish, we are going to be back to the worst iterations of those lockdowns that we were last year. People are going to start to crumble.
It is
the truth of it.
It is so foolish, and we have the vaccines. Everybody in aged care and most of the elderly have been vaccinated. The rollout continues. Surely there's something you can do as the local MP to get guarantees from the government that you'll never have to face a lockdown like this again, never in Mildura.
Look, I guess in Mildura, we don't want mass casualties. If there was to be a spike in Mildura, let's say, somehow there was a seeding event in Mildura, I know I would speak for most people in Mildura when I say that we would want some measures in place.
Oh, sure. Look, we all accept that. If there's a concentrated outbreak anyway, we all would want to do whatever needs to be done to lock that down. But we're talking about situations where you keep being locked down because of what's happening 600 kilometres away.
Yeah, and that's the problem. So we want proportionality and we want nuance. That has been my consistent mantra and appeal to the government all the way through, because otherwise you start to undermine the very safety measures you're trying to promote when people start to lose faith and lose that morale and lose that spirit of cooperation, and that's the biggest risk. Then we become more unsafe. It becomes counterproductive for the aims of government. So look, we continue to fight for that nuance and proportionality, and we've been doing it today. We've been doing it, ever since this lockdown was announced.
Who's running the show down there? Do you think it's still Daniel Andrews from his from home, or is it James Molina, or is it Brett Sutton? Who's actually in charge?
I don't know. I'm not close enough to the action, Chris, to know. Look, I think that our Victorian government, who I work constructively with, is they're in charge. They've got that mandate to be in charge, and I am being very and saying that I'm grateful as a state MP and acknowledge that they're trying to keep us safe, but that we live in a democracy. There might be other systems of government where all you need to worry about is administrative efficiency, and locking everyone down the same is administratively more efficient. But in a democracy, there are other considerations, and one of those things is being able to bring people along. Yep. And nuance and proportionality is key to that. And in a democracy, I just think that we need something more in terms of that consideration.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us, Ali. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Chris.